Paddy Pimblett versus Bobby Green. Bobby King Green. King Green just happened, and Paddy Pimblett choked Bobby Green out with a little bit over 2 minutes left in round one. So what does this mean? Is Paddy Pimblett now a ranked lightweight? He called out Renato Moicano. How is that fight going to go out? And is Paddy Pimblett a legitimate lightweight contender, or is this just an example of Bobby Green declining? So the fight starts out, and we have a little bit of a tit-for-tat approach from both of these guys. Paddy Pimblett is throwing leg kicks to Bobby Green's leg. Bobby Green is throwing these teep kicks to Paddy's knee. And they trade back and forth, but we do get the sense that Bobby Green is feeling uncomfortable in the striking. I think it's fair to say that the leg kicks that Paddy was landing on Bobby were impacting Bobby Green's legs more than the teep kicks that Bobby was throwing at Pimblett. Now, we also have these jabs from Paddy Pimblett that are actually pretty decent, kind of knocking Bobby Green off to the side. And all of these kicks that Bobby is throwing at Paddy aren't really seeming to impact him. A lot of Bobby Green's best striking work comes from his hands, his boxing, and he really wasn't able to get that going at all. Pimblett did a good job of moving away from Bobby Green's strikes, actually landing some counter shots. So right here we have Bobby Green throwing some lazy strikes, and he gets caught kind of pushed off balance with this left hook that Pimblett is throwing. So Bobby Green is definitely feeling uncomfortable and not really able to find his rhythm or the placement for the strikes. He does land a good body shot there, but again, Pimblett is countering with this right hand. Pimblett was talking a lot about his kicks before the fight. He said that he's not going to wrestle Green and he's going to knock his chin off with his foot. So even though his striking is improving, I still think Paddy doesn't really have a whole consolidated game plan built around his striking, relying a lot on his kicks. And it just seems like he's not very comfortable and knowing what he needs to do with the striking. Like, it's great to land these leg kicks and even these little counter jabs to knock your opponent off balance, but you're not going to knock anyone out with stuff like that. And it's a really kind of a surefire way to A, make it a boring fight, and B, set yourself up for losing. If you don't have a game plan and a way to get to from point B to point A through this striking, like he doesn't really have a goal in mind. If his only goal is I'm going to kick Bobby Green's legs whenever I can, and I'm going to push him off balance with my hands whenever I can, that's a decent strategy, but it's not really getting you anywhere towards a finish, and you're just hoping that you're able to land more leg kicks on him than he is on you. So it's not like he's setting up his grappling through his striking. He's not using his striking to build anything off of his game. Will his striking continue to improve? I'd like to see that. I do think that he has some just natural power in his hands. He has a few knockouts. But we didn't really see him make any adjustments to Bobby Green's teep kicks, and Green was landing a few good teep kicks on him throughout this fight. And in this situation, so Paddy goes in for a kick on Bobby Green's leg. Bobby Green just decides to take him down and mix up the fight, which is what a lot of veterans would do. Like Bobby Green can wrestle as well. Make your opponent worry about the wrestling. I just think that this was a bad decision against an elite grappler like Paddy Pimblett, and I think that Bobby Green also found out that that's a bad decision. So what happens? We get some stellar grappling from Paddy Pimblett here. Bobby Green goes for the takedown. Immediately, Paddy has this arm-in guillotine that he goes for. Green continues to fight for the single leg, so he has Paddy's left leg between his hands. He does lift Paddy up and takes him down. Paddy has this guillotine right now. And immediately, he's actually able to get his right leg up over Green's arm. And what does he do? Well, he slides it over the top of Green's back, and then he hooks it underneath his left leg. So he's setting up the triangle immediately, which is just the definition of an elite grappler, where you're always a step ahead of your opponent and you're using one position to set yourself up for another position. So he gets this in. He has the triangle pretty locked in. He throws some elbows, which is nice. Bobby Green is fighting it, but at this point, it's a pretty much locked in triangle. So what do fighters do when their opponents have a locked in triangle? Well, they can try to slam their opponent on the ground, knocking them out. They can try to survive until the round runs out of time, and then they're essentially saved by the bell. And how are you going to survive? Well, you need to get your arm that's by your neck underneath the hips. But Paddy does a great job of grabbing Bobby's right arm, which is the arm that's by his neck, inside the triangle, and pulling it across Bobby's neck, making the choke even tighter and threatening the armbar. So Bobby Green was pretty much done at this point, and you can see this horrible stretch that Pimblett has. And I think it's safe to say that at this point, when he's flipped over onto his back, he is unconscious. The referee thankfully sees that he's out, and he tells Pimblett to stop. Great grappling sequence from Paddy Pimblett there. His grappling has always been top-notch. I would have liked to see a more succinct and clear game plan from Paddy Pimblett. If he really, truly decided to come into this fight just throwing kicks, just throwing these check left hooks with no real power behind them, that is a cause for concern as he climbs up the lightweight rankings. He wasn't setting up his grappling with his kicks or his strikes at all. He was able to find some good spots on his opponent to land these strikes that he's been working on. But again, he doesn't have a real game plan that you can point to as his fighting style. He has his grappling, which works when his opponents attack him, but he doesn't have really good wrestling to get the fight to that ground or good striking to set up his grappling. He can't force his opponents to go and into the grappling realm on him. Against Renato Moicano, I think that's actually a really good fight. I love that call out from Pimblett. I think that the grappling between the two is going to be really fun to watch. I think that Paddy Pimblett is going to have the edge in the grappling, and Moicano might have the edge on the feet. We have seen Moicano get really rocked before, so Paddy Pimblett might be able to find his chin with some of these wild punches that he's been throwing lately in some of his other fights. But that's going to be a fun one. Moicano has some power in his own hands. He is a really tough guy. He can take a shot and keep coming forward. But I think Paddy Pimblett really planned his call out well, in the sense that he called out a very beatable opponent for the skill set that Pimblett has. So, is Paddy Pimblett a legitimate prospect at lightweight, or was this just a very poor decision from Bobby Green? I think you have to say that Pimblett is a legitimate prospect now. I was not a fan of him after the Tony Ferguson performance. I was not a fan of him after the Jared Gordon performance. But the fact that he made Bobby Green feel uncomfortable enough on the feet, so to the point where Bobby Green shot on him, is a big feather in his cap. And the fact that he was able to throw 2 different submission attempts up onto Bobby Green, 3 I guess if you count the armbar, in such a short period of time, choking unconscious an elite grappler at lightweight like Bobby Green, is another big feather in his cap. So I think that this is a marked step forward in Paddy Pimblett's progression through the lightweight rankings, and you have to give him props for it. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. Please let me know your thoughts of Paddy Pimblett in the comments down below, and everyone, have a great rest of your day.